Hey guys, so yesterday I participated in a double box Maze of Memories tournament, and so I finished top 4 after some rounds of Swiss and Top Cut with Pure Spright, which is a deck that I really like. I've been playing it since the deck came out, so I thought I'd share my deck list in terms of how it works now without Elf. And I did win 30 packs of Maze of Memories, and I pulled my first ever collector's rare, which I did post on Instagram if you use that platform. But anyways, let's just get right to the deck profile. Alright, so starting with the main deck, we do have the 3 Spright Blue, of course, and as well as the 3 Spright Jet. And I'm actually playing double red and double carrot. So I've been playing this I played this when it first came out, even though most people were on just 1-on-1. I really like the fact that it allows them to be a little bit more expendable in the instance where you do have to, like, for example, overlay for gigantic when you just don't have a choice, or go into sprint for example. And you also don't have elf anymore, so it's kind of nice to have another one that you can summon out later for that spell and trap negate, especially the carrot. Usually people only expect this to be at 1. Some have been playing this at 2 anyways, but I've always liked this ratio. It's been working out great, and I'm still crazy enough to still play Pixies. I really like this card for a number of reasons. Aside from that attack boost, it's just nice to have another body that you can special summon in the instance again where you don't have maybe an optimal hand, and it just allows you to extend, and also just to ensure that you kill your opponent by having that one extra body that you can special, especially in the instance of Mosquito where like every single body really counts. And this also allows you to out any kind of like tower monsters, because they're usually something where they can be destroyed by battle, which means anything like Dragoon or Rav Ignis or Psychic Again Punisher, you can just attack over with any of your baby little mini Sprite guys and just attack over them, which is pretty funny. Also, I should mention this is Valor Dragon Shield sleeves, dual matte, so I really love this color, so definitely go check that out. I'll have the link below. And then some other level 2s, we of course have the 3 Nimble Beavers and then the 2 Nimble Anglers. Really self-explanatory, the best normal summon in the deck, and just allows you to kind of go off. And then I'm still on that delusion of playing the Toad package with the 3 Swap Frogs. I still like it. I like the Toad, and I can, I guess, explain that more also in the extra deck section. But I just like Toad because aside from that Omni Negate, it just allows that follow-up, because when Toad goes to the graveyard, you can just add back that Nimble Beaver just so you can have some follow-up, because you just don't have Elf anymore, and that's really hard in the grind game. Now, of course, ideally, you just sort of force them into submission on by turn 1, and they just can't play anymore. But you want to have that recovery, and being able to add back that Beaver is nice. And the Frog, especially let's say if you open with a Nimble Beaver, or rather Nimble Angler, that can be nice. Just being able to special without using up your normal summon when going second is also quite important. But I do at least usually side at least 1 out going second. Some other monsters, we're playing the 2 Fenrir. I was main decking this, and then I took it out for double Cosmic Cyclones, because something like Skill Drain, for example, it's really problematic for Spright. I decided to put this in though again, because it's obviously a really good card, but just that free body is really nice. Especially in times, again, if you were to ever really break, which admittedly doesn't happen too often. This deck is really consistent, which is what I love about this deck. And if you have to go into like special this, someone like just the only level 2 you have, and then to go into sprint, like that plays into Nibiru quite hard, but maybe that's like your only play. But all in all, this is a great card for going first and second, and also I am playing Mannequin Cat in the extra, so it just gives you just like another target to be able to bring out. And then some other hand traps. We also have the 3 Ash and the 3 Nibs. I do have also 3 Imperm that I'll show later. These are really good. Obviously against Branded, this is really nice. And Branded is another deck that I'm playing right now, and it's just a really stressful deck to play, because it's like, oh, do they have Ash or do they not? And even if they don't, do they have D-Barrier? Nibiru is really nice as well, and it's kind of funny that it can technically hit a trap deck like Trap Tricks as well. Of course, if they get Reflegia out, then it's no. But all in all, great card, and I really like it. And especially you'll see I'm also main decking evenly, and with Nibiru it's kind of nice, because if you give them that Nibiru token, and I tend to put them in attack mode now, because for example, if it's not too high of attack for the token, you could like crash into that token and then use evenly, and then they have to keep that token, right? Because tokens cannot be banished face down. And the other good thing with Nibiru in this deck is that ironically enough, you kind of want the token attack to be as kind of high as possible, because with Ninja Shadow Mosquito you can just OTK really easily if that token is like really big enough, at the very least, let's say like 4,000 or higher, so that you only need 2 additional attacks with Mosquito. On to the spells, of course, the 3 starter. Now, this is a card that I thought would actually get limited instead of Elf getting hit, but you know what? I'll actually take it. I think this might be more important. I think without this, it's really hard to play this deck because then you become way too reliant on your normal summon, and any deck that can pop or bounce your normal summon, you kind of just lose going second. And I really like this deck because it can also be quite good going second in terms of its OTK capabilities or just clearing the board. So I really like that. The other, of course, staple to play in Spright is that Smasher, really good for banishing. It just really nice. And you know, I decided to main deck Gamma Burst as well. I saw Ding Kang main decking this in one regional profile, and again, you should definitely go check his channel out and his Spright stuff. He's the go-to guy for Spright, not me. But I know I really like that concept, especially now because Elf is banned. That Cat Shark OTK doesn't really come up too much anymore because it's hard to get that Gigantic into 3200 as easily as when Elf was available, because Elf could just revive back a body and then go into that 3200 Gigantic, and then the Cat Shark makes it 64. But now you don't have that, and this just allows a main deck OTK really easily as well. And you know, for example, like Toad or a lot of your 2s, like they're just really weak, and having this is kind of nice and is a nice surprise factor, and really does come up when you're just going for that push. And this 1400 attack boost for everything is really nice. Although keep in mind, it is on like all of the field, so like if you're in a Spright mirror, do not play this card when you're attacking into their 2s. Next, some spells. I'm playing 3 Pot of Prosperity. Honestly, I think you can quote me, I do think this card is going to get limited on the next list. I think it has to. Now, we've always had tier 1 decks play it, but now it's just getting a little too insane, and this card has been out for a while. They've already done the Megaton reprint. I think this card should get limited. I love this card. I've played it since its release, but it's just far too good. And in this deck especially, you know, I am main decking evenly, so even when you lose the Darrow and you go second, like there's a good chance you can still dig for that evenly and still have a shot going second, which happened throughout that tournament for me. And it's really good, especially post side when you're going first too, and you just dig for that a card like something like Anti-Spell Fragrance or D-Barrier or Royal Decree, even just Floodgates or Pointer. It's just crazy good, and I really like it. And this is the reason I decided not to play Hyperia, and you can. I was actually trying both but it's just that, you know, the draw effect does conflict, but it's just nice to have that extra body anyways. But by taking out the Hyperia, I just put the Fenrir in. That's what I decided to do. And just the one Book of Eclipse I'm deciding to, I had to sort of find room because I was putting back in those Fenrirs again into the main. Book of Eclipse is of course really nice, but I decided, you know what, I have enough hand traps and going board breakers in terms of evenly match, for example, going second, that it was fine to just play it at 1, but you feel free to just shift things around. And then traps, Double Cross. This is really good. It's kind of crazy because it's like permanent in terms of, let's say, if you take their opponent's monster, it's nuts. The only downside though is, for example, the way I go into Toad is through the Bujinki line, right? But the thing is, at least for me, I always like to try to play around Nibiru, so I go into like Gigantic early, and by doing that, essentially, long story short, you sort of have the sprint pointing to the Bujinki, which means you can't really use like Shotgun Double Cross to bring back the Toad to arrow that it points to, because you don't have an arrow that points to. But either way, you try to like tribute off that Bujinki with like a red or a carrot or something, or even a Smasher. But this card is really, really nice. Even going second, I still like to keep it in for the most part, because in the grind game, it just like, it really turns things around, and because it's a permanent take, like it just does wonders. And of course, the other traps, the 3 Imperm, I think self-explanatory, really good. Well, I guess it's a little bit tricky though, because again, something like Trap Tricks now, and as well as even Labyrinth, you know, it's not amazing. I might take this out, but I think it's just quite the versatile card, especially for example, like turning off Floodgates in certain instances. That can certainly be helpful, and I've been mentioning this repeatedly, but evenly match in the main deck I think is sort of the common trend now, and it is totally worth it. Even if you end up winning the Direwall and you go first, it's fine. You know, you can always, like, for example, even pitch it for like Nightmare Cerberus or Nightmare Phoenix if you have to. But it's just such a good card going second that I think it's worth main decking. And that's it for the main deck at 43. So on to the extra, we do have the Sprint. This card has become even more important now that Elf is gone. This bounce effect is actually really sneaky good, and for some reason, just so many players just forget about it, and and they just get things bounced. Like for example, like Runic, they just get their guy bounced back. They're like, oh, okay. Although keep in mind that effect to bounce, and also in terms of its dump effect, you can only use one of those 2 effects in the same turn, and that can come up if you're going second. So definitely don't cheat that way. You can only use one of those 2 effects, but Sprint is a very good card. I was considering playing 2 purely because of, for example, Kashira, or just in terms of if the first one got negated. But you know what, I decided to just stick with 1, and it was fine. I'm on that Bujinki line. For that Toad, I was trying different things. So for example, the other common example is Coral Anemone. The only thing with Coral though is because that's a special that Frog to zone it points to. If you try out your combo lines, and then when you're trying to play around Nibiru, again, as I mentioned, and you go into like Gigantic first, very often I'm finding that your zones get clogged so that you actually cannot really bring out that Frog for the Toad line. It works out if you don't have many Sprite monsters to begin with, but you know, overall, after trying different lines, especially with Reaper too, I kind of like this one, but you can also try the Reaper line. We do have the IP, of course, with the Nightmare Phoenix, Cerberus. I like these 2. I mean, this can come up with a lot of back row heavy decks. And, you know, pitching an angler is kind of nice, too. I decided to just stick with Avermax. I've been going back and forth with this and Zerberus. I think the Zerberus with starter and then just banishing everything is really nice. The only problem is now, you know, people kind of know what's going to happen with that. But you know what, either way, Zerberus is still quite strong, so I might switch back with that. But I really like Avermax too. I think it's still pretty decent. Not being able to target it and just a lot of attack damage when it attacks. It's pretty nice. The Xyz, double Gigantic. I almost want to play 3 of this, but I decided to just play the Mannequin Cat instead. But it's obviously now, I guess with Sprint, like, you know, your best Sprite extra deck monsters, really good. Doesn't come up as much now in terms of getting this to 3200 because I like to keep that Sprint, for example. But all in all, it's something that really nice in the grind game as well. The 1 Toad, as I mentioned, Omni Negate, but it's just nice to get that Beaver back for the follow-up. I'm still trying the Nibiru, especially when you're like playing Nibiru. Sometimes, like nowadays, I guess you have Mosquito, so you can just attack and do a lot of damage. But there are certain times where any kind of monster that you really just need to clear it, that you can't, because Sprites are generally quite weak. They do get it back on their end phase, so definitely make sure they do that. And so yeah, pretty nice. Mannequin Cat. It's interesting. I was not playing this for the longest time because I was like, well, I'm not playing any kind of like lock floodgate targets, right? Like Ryo or Goliath or like the Anubis card back in the day. But I realize it's still quite good, especially when you get interrupted and there's not much for you to end on. Like, let's say you just can't make Toad anymore, or like, what's the point of making Gigantic pass? So, you know, Mannequin Kit's kind of nice. It also helps in that grind game because it can special from deck or grave or hand, whatever. So it's nice and can get your Sprite combo started. And also, another thing I'll show you later in the side, but I was thinking of the Thunder Kaiju, but I'll get to that later. And that with that interaction. We also have the Mosquito. This is what enables those OTKs really easily now. So yeah, I think this card is so crazy. It just does a lot of damage, and that hallucinate whatever counter, it's actually kind of interesting because it also negates the effects of that monster with the counter. So that can kind of come up, although it can actually be detrimental too, because for example, if they had high attack because of their effect, such as I said Gigantic, it was like your opponent had a 3200 Gigantic, but you put a counter on them, and then they actually go back down to 1600. So when as you're trying to attack and burning, you realize, oh man, that counter actually was counterproductive because it lowered the attack and you can't kill them anymore. So keep that in mind. Also, we do have the Downward. Nothing, you know, self-explanatory, just for that double Zeus line. And playing double Zeus only because of Kashtira, which is really annoying. That, you know, it's a secret big brain move by Konami to make people buy multiples. But yeah, I mean, you know what? One time the double Zeus actually did come out against like a trap deck, but all in all, I think this extra is pretty solid and a little bit flexible as well. Alright, so onto the side deck, we do have the Red Resonator. Honestly, this doesn't come up too much anymore now that we're not in a tier format where turns take so long and you really need time cards. It's there just in case, but personally, I've not had the need to use it too much. We have some Bakuhei Double Cosmic. I was playing Twins. I might think back and forth on that. But you know what? I'm finding, especially online as well, and also IRL play, I'm finding a lot of Runic decks coming back again, and just being able to banish is kind of nice. And then the Feathers, self-explanatory. And I decided to put the Lightning Storms, and that's why I switched these out instead of the Twins, because the main reason for playing Twin was just to cover as many cards back row as possible, but I might as well just have Lightning Storm. It's okay. Obviously, there's, you know, Trap Tricks, they have a way to protect it. Also, Labyrinth, the Heavenly Prison can protect it. Kashtira, they're probably summoning every monster in defense mode, but at the same time, it still can be nice, and it's pretty generic. And I was thinking Dark Holes, but the other card that I was mentioning earlier in that extra deck section section, I was actually originally playing the Thunder Kaiju, and the reason for this, two reasons. A is that it's a Kaiju with the highest attack, 3300, and so in the instance of Mosquito, I felt that, you know what, I might as well go with the highest attack because, you know, don't get me wrong, if they're at full 8,000 life points, it doesn't really matter, because even Gadala would be enough for 3 attacks, and it's like 8,100. 3 attacks on top of Mosquito, I should clarify. But in the instance it's a grind game, and they're, like, let's say around 6,600 or just under, then, you know, 2 additional attacks on top of Mosquito for it to be game, that can actually be a big difference. And it's also a Thunder, which means with Mannequin Cat, in the rarest situations, if it ever comes up, you know, if the Kaiju is special to your opponent's side of the field, Mannequin Cat does still trigger, even though you're the one specialing it. And then, you know, it's Thunder, so it's like full Spright combo as well. So, you know, I did think about it. You can play it as well. Kaijus are pretty good right now. The only downside was, let's say, again, something like Labyrinth. It doesn't really matter because they're just going to shotgun, let's say, like Deck Devi Virus if they're playing it, and you just die. And then the other two, Book of Eclipse, as I mentioned in my main deck section, I was just playing one. I might kind of rotate this back in a bit more. Book of Eclipse is quite nice, actually, so really good. So going first options, a pointer, really strong, and I decided to try out Anti-Spell this time. I was playing D-Barrier. Realistically, the main reason for D-Barrier was for Branded. But the thing is, this is really strong against Branded too, and it's a bit more generic, and you can use it against a lot of other just rogue decks, and it's just very, very strong. So it's nice. I might go back and forth between this and D-Barrier, but all in all, I think it's a great choice. And the other side choice was Royal Decree, because I really don't like Trap decks, Trap Tricks, Labyrinth. This is really strong, and you might argue this is too many going first side cards, and I agree. But at the same time, this is actually something I saw going in second anyways against those Trap decks, so that's why. And it's not like you can really put this in against Trap decks for the most part. So, you know, I really like this card. I think it's very, very strong, but it's not a guaranteed win, though, of course. If you give them too many turns, then they're going to be able to out it or just play around it. So in all, you know, really trying to force them into submission and pushing for game the next turn. Alright, so that was it for the deck profile. Hopefully that was helpful, and certainly let me know in the comments how you're playing Spright in this format. And so, as always, a big thanks to my sponsors and Patreons as usual. Really appreciate the support, and well, take care, guys.